Okay, looks like we're up and running. Welcome everybody to Minor League Matters. This is a quick take on what I thought was the best and the worst of last year. So, uh, sorry about the glowing eyes. I'm at a hotel, and so I can't do the lighting right. And if I don't wear these things, I don't see right. So I can either do this, so y'all can't see me at all, or I can look up and have glowing eyes of doom. So you're going to get glowing eyes of doom. Um, let's start out. We're going to do this. Like I said, it's going to be a quick take. Let's talk about some of the best things, most interesting things that happened this year. First of all, the whole season this year starts out. I start out my thing at the beginning of the year with baseball, right? First day of the year, proof that God loves baseball. Norfolk, well, it's the day before the season starts. Norfolk is playing the Orioles in an exposition game. Exhibition game. I am going to drive from Wise, Virginia to Norfolk to watch it. It is storming and raining and storming the whole way until like a half an hour before the game's supposed to watch. As I'm driving up, before the game's supposed to start, as I'm driving up, the sky clears, the sun comes out. I go in at the Norfolk Stadium, and of course they've got the silly new logo and everything. But I go there and watch them play a pretty good game all around. And ends up in a tie, and they announce as the ninth inning is coming up, or as ninth inning is going on, they're not going to play any extra innings because it is an exhibition game, and they have real season start the next day or day after, something like that. And so game ends, and as we start walking out of the stadium, the sky opens up. Now I got to my car only slightly wet, and had to sit in the car for, 20 minutes before the rain lightened up enough that I could actually see. So, but, that period of time when the game was on, it was all great. Montez, get done. Again, like I say, proof that God loves baseball. The most surprising thing that I went to this year was the Mahoning Valley Scrappers, right? This is a short season A team up in the Cleveland area, or close to the Cleveland area. And I went there on the 4th of July. Now, it's the 4th of July, and that week is baseball's big week, right? Because, if you're a Patriot, you go watch baseball. And so I show up in Mahoning Valley. I expected to be a decent-sized crowd, a couple 3,000. I mean, it's short season A, right? And I've experienced the Appalachian League, which is rookie ball in down, where it is in Tennessee, Virginia, North Carolina, etc., West Virginia. And I've seen what the big crowds are there, like at Pulaski or Greenville. And so I'm kind of expecting maybe a little bit more than that because it's up north and they get bigger crowds. I pull up an hour early and I have to go up to get my tickets at will call. There's already 4,000 people in line, maybe, I don't know. So I just went back and sat in my car and played, some sort of game on a tablet until such time as they opened up. The crowd cleared and I went in, and it was a fun game to watch. Nothing against the game or anything. It was, short season A, which means basically whoever makes the least mistakes wins. That's the way it is in rookie and short season A. But it was fun to watch. One of the more interesting things is that in the middle of the game, between innings, they came out and they threw loaves of bread at the people in the stands. And you'd have thought they were all starving because, wow, they fought for those loaves of bread. And at least one of them ripped open and there were bread going everywhere, right? Just amazing. Okay, so, but as part of my big trip this year, I have to say the favorite team I went to was the Lake Erie Crushers, right? Lake Erie Crushers have revamped themselves, new owners, new logo, which is kind of a cool logo of an angry grape, right? Which is fun. They've changed their color to purple instead of the red and black, which really made no sense previously. And it was just fun to watch. And it was the day after the 4th of July, so the crowd was a little bit smaller. But they had clearly, their souvenir shop had been hit, right? Wanted to buy a hat and couldn't exactly because they were all gone until they got new ones ordered in. I caught a ground rule double. I got it after it went over the wall because I was back there taking pictures. It bounced over. There was no kids that could get there before me. Think of yourself when you do these, when you go to a lot of these games as being kind of jaded, except I ran to grab that ball just like those little 8-year-old boys do too. So I now have an Appalachian League ball to join my balls from, I think, Jackson and from Charlotte Power, Charleston Power. I don't get a ball unless it's a foul or ground rule double or something like that. I don't do the whole begging for a ball from people thing. I just don't think it counts unless it's actually been in play and you get it from that. Okay, so let's see. The longest game I went to this year was Louisville Bats, right? And this was a long weekend. I had the night before I had gone to see the Florence Freedom play in Florence, Kentucky, and they had a doubleheader, which I didn't realize. I guess they'd had a rained-out game and put a doubleheader. I just realized the time had changed. I went and watched 2 7-inning games, right? Then the night after, I went to Evansville, Indiana, and watched a really good game in which the poor ump was this big, huge black guy. Just kept getting hit by the ball. The catcher would miss it or it would bounce or whatever, and he was just absorbing everything. And he was a heck of a man because he just kept going. There was one point where the ball goes high, the catcher misses it, ducks his head, and it goes like an inch over his head, and he just sits there with his head down for like 10 seconds, and then he gets up, and it's like, okay, play ball. I was impressed. Okay, so and that game in Evansville went to the 9th inning, and Evansville won a home run in the 9th, right? Okay. But sandwiched in between those games was the Louisville Bats, and I can't remember who they're playing anymore. What I do remember is that it had been raining that day, so there was a 45-minute rain delay. The rain delay ends, and they start the game. The game goes, and it just keeps going, and it just keeps going. 16 innings later, I think the Louisville had like a outfielder pitching. Nobody had any, hand-eye coordination to hit the ball, and basically it ends up being, walks and stuff. It ends up, the game ends 16 minutes later at approximately, as I recall, about 2:30 a.m. There was me in the stadium. There were, maybe 100 other people still left, maybe. One roving pack of feral young kids, which doesn't bother me too much as they chase the balls. Matter of fact, this time it probably saved me because there was a ball hit behind me. It's bouncing back, and I look back, and all I can see is the glaring lights in my face, and some little 8-year-old kid jumps over and grabs the ball with his glove, which, probably kept me from getting conked on the head. But I'm not sure I would have noticed it at about 1:30 or 2 in the morning. So that was the longest game of the year. So now, as everybody does, I'm going to talk about the worst of the year and the best of the year. I'll talk about the worst first. Worst of the year, number 3, the third worst of the year, was actually last night. The last night of 2017, I went to Columbus Blue Jackets, right? I get there, get harassed on the way in by beggars and a con man. But, that happens any place in the bigger cities. You kind of get that sort of thing. Then I get there and get in, and, I go buy a pretty cool hat, right? I like the hat. And bought a puck, because I always buy a puck at a hockey match. Go and find my seat, which was interesting to do. It was up on the second level, and it was a good place to view the game. I was able to see everything perfect. It was fine for that. The seat itself was incredibly bad. It was way too thin. They had rock hard armrests on each side, which wouldn't have been bad, except they had cup holders on the front of them, so that you had to squeeze your way between the cup holders to sit back, or you had to sit on the edge of the seat up front in front of the cup holders. And because the seats were so thin, people were alternating, sitting back and forth, depending on who, one person would sit forward, another person would sit back, the next person would sit forward. Because there wasn't room. If we'd have all sat side by side, and I realize I'm big gutted and fairly big shouldered, but even, short of you being like a skinny little 100-pound guy or a kid, if you sat shoulder to shoulder, you'd have been crushing up against each other the whole game. And the thing was, you couldn't even turn sideways because the cup holders locked you in if you went back behind them. You couldn't use the cup holders for cups either, because they just get whatever was in it got crushed, right? Kind of inexcusable for the cost of those tickets. The tickets cost me over $80 once whatever the invisible fees and taxes and all that went into it. So I wouldn't, and they were probably about the cheapest tickets I could find online. So not really a good thing. Well, okay, number 2 was the Lexington Legends. This was a Tim Tebow's in town, right? So the Legends open up the park 2 hours early, and then they let everybody come in, or maybe even earlier, let everybody come in, let everybody watch batting practice, let everybody buy lots of food, let everybody buy lots of souvenirs. And I'm there with my brother, right? And so we go down to sit in our seats, and it had been raining earlier. We sit in our seats. The sun is kind of broken out a little bit. And I look down and I comment to my brother, because the infield's covered, and it's, 10 minutes before the game's supposed to start. The infield's covered. They haven't got fans under the tarp or anything, right? They're not out there trying to fix the field up. They're not doing anything. And I comment to my brother, this doesn't look good. That's not the way you act when you're trying to fix a field up. And I've seen plenty of fields where they tried to fix them up, which were in a lot worse situations than this one was, and games got played. They waited until time of game and then announced, game's called because of rain, and we're sorry, you can exchange your ticket for tomorrow or later. Well, I'm 3 hours away, so tomorrow or later doesn't really work, and my brother's not the hugest baseball fan. So they got 2 tickets, 2 seats paid for nothing, and the whole place was packed, of course, because everybody was coming to see Tebow. So they got a bunch of tickets for nothing. I'm not sure how many people couldn't make it back. Although there was a huge line as we walked out while it was still dry. That was getting their tickets exchanged for the next day. They got a whole bunch of people who had bought touristy stuff. I had bought a baseball and a pennant, which of course don't count because I ain't putting the baseball in my case because I didn't see a game, and I'm not putting a pin on my wall because I didn't see a game. And I don't know how much money they made by doing this. Thing was, though, I went to supper then with my brother. We we ate supper, and I made sure I stayed near a window that whole time, and I didn't see a drop of rain. Now, maybe we were, a few miles away when we ate supper. Maybe it poured at the stadium, and we didn't get it. I'm doubtful. They really rooked everybody. And the worst of the worst this year was at the beginning of the year, right after I went and saw Norfolk play baseball. I then went off to D.C. and watched D.C. United play. And it was in RFK Stadium, which was crumbling around us as we got there. The parking lot was, half filled with water. There was a lake in the middle of the parking lot. Walk over. It's freezing cold and wet, and the wind just started whipping up as soon as I parked there. It hadn't been too bad previously. Wind starts whipping up. It's wet. It's cold. All I had was a sweater. I did end up buying, of course, I bought a hat and I bought a scarf. You actually used the scarf for once, and then sat in seats that were way off the field. I mean, just huge way back off the field, where you could not see what was going on. But they were low enough that when the people who were actually, press were out there taking pictures, they could stand in a place and block me from seeing what was happening, even when it got close enough to us. I was on one end of the field. When it got close enough for us to see what was going on, the press would get up and take pictures and block me from seeing things. It was a terrible, miserable experience, and still sticks through to this day. Although the seats were fine, they were wide enough for you to sit in. It was just a miserable experience. Next year, sometime, they are supposed to have a new stadium. But although apparently there's problems going on, so it's not going to be ready at the beginning of the season. Shock. And if things keep going the way they're going in Columbus, probably going to boycott MLS after next season once Columbus moves. So I may never see the new stadium for DC United. And finally, having gone with the downers, let's see with what was good about this year. The top three things of the year. Well, number one, or the number three, is the Elizabethton twins. Elizabethton was kind of in a death spiral all year long, right? They didn't. The Twins had said, "You're going to put money into building this stadium up, or else we're going to leave." The city of Elizabethton in Tennessee was fighting that. They did not want to put money into this municipal stadium. They were quite happy with it, and as a fan, I was quite happy with it too. It's a fun place to watch a game. It's really kind of old-fashioned. It's small. You're close in with everybody, and it's just a good hometown small venue, right? And it wasn't like they needed more space for fans and that. I'm sure that the the Minnesota Twins wanted them to grade the field and better outfield than the corrugated wall outfield they've got, and probably things to keep the skunks from coming in, which is at least seen one game there delayed while the skunk was in the outfield. And probably better drainage, although they've got an amazing draining system there. When it rains, that place will flood, but they've got the drainage system set up so it clears it really quickly. Well, all that's going on. Elizabethton just happens to go out and win the Appalachian League Championship, which would have been ironic if it had been their last season. And after the season ends, or as the season's ending, the town agrees to throw in some money, and I think $1.5 million, and they're going to start doing improvements on the stadium. And the Twins decide to keep their rookie league team in Elizabethton. So all that's good. That's my number three thing for the year. Number two, the Florence Freedom. Florence Freedom were in the championship series of the Frontier League, independent baseball. I go up now. They're playing Schaumburg Boomers. The Boomers have won their home games, so it all flips to Florence. I go up for the first game, and Florence plays lights out. The place was packed. I mean, I'm not sure it's the most I've seen at a Frontier League match. It might well have been, but it was packed. It was rocking. The game was tight and being played hard. The fans were going nuts. The interesting things. It's got all the things that Frontier League does. Even if it's a playoff game, out when you come in, the people handing out the goodies to you as you come in the door are people on the team, right? When you came in and they were clearing out what they had left over from giveaways that year. So people are taking little towels and all this sort of stuff, and they're like, do you want the bobblehead or you want the visor? And I'm like, what am I gonna do with a visor? So I take the bobblehead. I'm like, what bobblehead is this? I go to my seat and I pop it open. It's the local Catholic bishop. Apparently, they had a giveaway day where they gave away the local Catholic bishop. I now have the local Catholic bishop sitting on my desk at the office. It's just interesting. So it was fun. It was a blast. And I've always recommended going to see the Frontier League if you can. But that was a fun one. And the number one thing this year was going to Lou City FC to watch soccer, the playoffs for USL. Louisville got into which doesn't have a nickname, although I've heard people try to use purple. And a lot of people just call them Lou City. That's what I'm going to do is call them Lou City. Lou City got into it, and they were pretty much the only real winning team in their half of the league. And there was a 4-game playoffs. They do single elimination every game, and they sold a package. You could get to the first 3 games, or whenever they were eliminated, if they were eliminated, and you would get a scarf, right? And on impulse, I buy the thing, right? They send me the scarf. They send me tickets for each game. And, if it had been 1 game and out, I'd have really been out some money. But since it went to 3, I saved quite a bit of money. It went to 4. Went to 3 that I was able to get to. I saved quite a bit of money. Drove up to Louisville. It was about a 4-hour drive each time. Went and watched them play. There was 1 game that they stomped the first team. I think it's the Rhinos, who are no longer in the USL, or at least they're taking a 1-year hiatus, which is what every team that's going out of business does when they're going out of business. And then 2 really good games. The next game was freezing cold. It went from being temperate to freezing cold to back to temperate in the next game. But the freezing cold game was played pretty well. And then there was a game at the end where they ended up with a shootout. And then the next game, so this was all blast. The crowds are packed. Everybody's screaming. USL has got it figured out, right? They're doing a much better job than MLS is. And, the NASL, of course, is in the death match with U.S. Soccer and the MLS. USL has got it figured out, and I would tell you to go watch your USL teams if they're not one of the affiliate teams of the MLS. Go watch Louisville, go watch Pittsburgh, go watch somebody who's out there. They're fun, but it was a blast. The crowds were rocking the entire time, and just kind of made soccer fun. Of course, the last game was on a Monday night, the final week, and since I had to work, I couldn't go up and watch that one. But that's all good. I was able to watch that one on since they broadcast all their games on the doggone YouTube. I was able to watch that too, and Louisville won, and they were the champs. And that was the best thing of the year I went to. I've got to say, folks, I've never made it to Cincinnati this year, and it sounds like a really good experience there. But Louisville's a good experience too. Even if it is in that baseball stadium, it's a good experience, and I would recommend it to everybody. And that's it for 2017. We got another year coming, and I'm sure it'll be a blast. Until such time as I come up with something important to talk about or something fun to talk about, I'm going to say goodbye, and I will see you soon. Go watch the minor league sports.